Hello, Internet. Gino, that Pinguino Grieco here again with another episode of Deep Listens. I am joined, as always, by Billy Sourdough Rothert.
I just had to get a quick snack in before the podcast, you know. I mean, you can't go into these podcasts on an empty stomach. We're going to get into some real deep shit here, and you got to be well fed.
Fuel up.
Yeah.
Fuel up, you got to get your sodium, you got to get your starches, and that's it.
Just a quick pretzel before we jump in, and that's all you need, really.
And I am joined by Peter Busby.
What's going on, everybody? How's everybody doing? Fun fact for this week's podcast, I've been reading about sled dog racing because the Iditarod just went off. Do you know let's just say the Iditarod during a sled race, these dogs will burn 12,000 calories a day? They're only 40 to 60 pounds. That's crazy.
What do they feed them? Is it just like you kill a caribou and then you leave it to the dogs and when you come back it's gone?
Like frozen salmon. You know, they get kibble too. Some people
Isn't that like a week's worth of calories for some humans?
Yeah, like 2,000 a day is like the standard on the nutrition facts.
Damn.
Yeah.
That is enlightening.
Yeah.
And so if you are not familiar with the podcast, this is our bi-weekly video game book club edition. Our off weeks are now interviews and other weird stuff. So
other great stuff.
Yes, great and
weirdly
strange.
Great.
Yes. And so this is our standard podcast where we all played the same game and we will talk about it. This half is spoiler free. The next half will be spoiler full.
And what game do we play this week, Gino?
We played an important game. Some would say
important.
A great game. Not me, but it's pretty good.
I think it's pretty great.
It's pretty good.
It's
Final Fantasy Crystal Chronicles for the GameCube. Yeah.
A nice throwback. Taking it back to 2003.
Taking it back. So Crystal Chronicles, Billy, I believe you picked it, correct?
Yes, I did pick it, though. You know, this pick was a little bit forced. We had to sort of get this game in so we could sort of practice it a little bit because we're going to be running it for the Giant Bomb Community Endurance Run. We did a podcast on that. We're going to do another one on that. So
basically, the off weeks are going to be dedicated to that until it happens because
there's
a lot of people who people need to get to know. Charity is important.
So, what is this game about?
Crystals and how we chronicle them.
Yeah, I mean,
Actually, the name is surprisingly descriptive with this one.
It is, well. Right? So you are allowed to select your character. You select you sort of build your character. You have a tribe, like basically a race and a type, and you can design some aesthetics. That comes into play a little bit later, but the basic story is you set out in a caravan. The whole world is polluted by this mysterious substance called miasma. It's like a fog or a smoke that is poisonous to humans, and monsters are unaffected by it. It seems that like the monsters even thrive in this environment. So in order to keep that miasma at bay in all of the towns where people live, they have these giant crystals that have to be recharged every year. So your mission is to go out, find these special trees to collect a drop of myrrh from them. That myrrh, once you get 3 drops, recharges your crystal for a year, and the actual gameplay cycles through you traveling through these various levels across this land, battling through monsters in this level, beating a boss, collecting a drop of myrrh, rinse, repeat. You get to explore more of the land as the game progresses and stuff, but that's basically the general gameplay and your motivations for the start of the game.
Yeah, and so your crystal chalice on your crystal caravan, you need 3 drops every year, and so every time you visit a dungeon, that dungeon will be tapped out the next year. So
correct.
It forces
It'll be like on cooldown, basically.
It forces you to go to a different dungeon at least every other year. So you can't just keep going to the ones right near your house.
Yeah.
As convenient as that would be.
And as the years go on, and I guess when I say years, we should call them just like, I guess, map cycles. It's a really short term.
They're years. They call them years.
They're years in-game, but I guess 1 year in gameplay time could be as much as like an hour of gameplay time.
It's 3 dungeons. Anytime you finish your 3rd dungeon, it progresses.
It's like three levels. Mm-hmm. So as the years go on in this game, more of the map gets available to you, more levels get available to you, you become more adept at fighting and stuff. So the game progresses kind of non-linear in a kind of a non-linear way. It progresses linearly through time and stuff, but the route you can go to the end of the game is pretty open-ended.
Yeah. So it's temporally linear, but not geographically.
Basically, yeah.
You can pick, after you've basically found 6 dungeons, you don't need to go to any others for the rest of the game. You need to at least go to like 1 for a special upgrade.
Yeah.
But other than that, you can just keep hitting the same places over and over again if you don't want to branch out. And also it's important, as time progresses, there will be events that change the world map, like ferries might become available that weren't there before, or
certain merchants might move around from different locations.
Geographical incidents might happen that change the availability of some areas. So,
there are certain map effects that make some parts of the world closed off to you or other parts open to you.
Exactly. And so as you progress through the game, at first it seems like you're just going to keep going pretty linearly from dungeon to dungeon, but later on, when some sort of large world-shaping events happen, it becomes clear that they thought a little bit more about how you might progress through this game and how to justify the progression model that they've come up with, which I found pretty cool. Like, what did you guys think of the Crystal Caravan concept of kind of rolling around? And it's important to mention, when you're on the world map, you can, at any point, just kind of run into a random event.
Like a little cutscene, like a little cutscene event.
Sometimes you'll run into like thieves. Sometimes you'll run into other caravans. You can run into traveling merchants. You can run into all sorts of people on the road. And at first, when I played this game when I was little, that really spooked me. Like, I thought that I would run into like a really bad encounter, or I didn't like having the game take control from me so randomly. But now that I played it again, I really enjoyed that mechanic. I thought that it was it added a lot of depth to the world.
Yeah, they're generally pretty benign. Uniformly, there's nothing really terrible that can happen, at least to you, during these encounters.
Yes.
I think the worst that can happen is maybe like you're in the early game and you run into one of those thief trios and they steal some important crafting item. That actually happened to me. I was playing through on a brand new game today, and they stole a piece of iron from me that I really needed to make a new weapon. So, like, I was like, man, like, that really just happened. Like, I can't go back on my save. I have like 3 dungeons under my belt right now. Like,
yeah,
it just was mild annoyance. That's probably the worst it gets.
Yeah, they'll take some of your stuff, and then occasionally you might lose some money, but nothing really bad happens.
But sometimes you'll run into some caravans that'll just say, hey, like, we're having a really good day. Why don't you come have a picnic with us? And they'll give you some food. Or you'll run across a caravan that gives you a good item.
Yeah.
I think one of the best early game weapons comes from one of those random encounters.
Yeah.
Yep. And so I think that the idea of moving around on the map gives a sense of space to Crystal Chronicles that it otherwise might not have. Because aside from that world map, this game is essentially a bunch of dungeons with an occasional town here or there, with nothing in between. Like, the connective tissue is that world map.
Yeah.
And one other thing that this does is, and this is, like, I guess, a common theme in not only Final Fantasy games prior to this, and Gina will definitely be able to back me up here, but in sort of other adventure games like this too, is so oftentimes the protagonist feels like the whole weight of the world is on their shoulders from the very beginning of the game. Like, from the start of your game, it's like, oh great, I'm going on this epic quest. It's just me. I'm level 1 right now, and I've got no spells and abilities, but I'll be fine to go up against that Sephiroth guy in about 30 hours of gameplay. Don't worry. But in this game, where it's different is that you're in this Crystal Caravan, and as you go through the world, you see other caravanners. They're doing the same thing you're doing. So you basically just sort of fit into this, like, I guess, how would you call it? Like a group? Like
this overarching struggle that kind of the entire world is going through.
The entire world's going through it, and other towns are doing the same thing you're doing. So you're really not special like other protagonists are.
It becomes almost just a profession,
Yeah, it's like
certain
a job.
people are alchemists, some are blacksmiths. I'm a caravaner, and it gives weight to it, obviously, because your town's depending on you. But, it does seem like, and I like it, it's refreshing. It seems like, well, if I die, we'll send another caravaner. The town will be okay.
But then you get to Taida.
Yeah, it doesn't always work out.
And you realize that sometimes doesn't work out.
Yeah.
But we'll save that for the second half, because some of these levels, have a surprising amount of depth to them. But what did you guys think, I guess, from point A, like picking a character? This game, there are 4 races. The Lilties, which are kind of tiny onion people, is how I would describe them. They're,
effectively like the dwarf race.
yeah,
like
but they're
dwarves.
they're tiny and cute, and they use spears, and they
Lots
have
of
the highest
parallels
strength.
to Lord of the Rings kind of dwarves
Kind
in
of.
both their lore and combat effectiveness.
Yeah, they are the blacksmiths, and they ruled the world with superior weaponry.
Because of all their mining that they could do.
Yep, and they're adorable. And the funniest thing is if you pick a Lilty and you have a younger brother or sister, the younger brother or sister has no arms. It's just a head on a body, which is adorable.
That's kind of true. I think they're just like tucked into their clothes,
Why?
but the character model is actually, they're not like missing limbs, I think.
No, they're missing limbs.
Oh, all right, well, fine.
Is there an explanation for the missing limbs?
They're not missing
They're too hard
limbs.
to They're just too hard to render.
Oh, but there's no
They're
like,
just so tiny.
there's no like in-game like the mining accident.
No.
No, I think it's like the Moogles. The Moogles, they're just too cute. They don't have little arms. They just got feet and they're round. It's that same sort of design decision. So they're just a little round head, onion head on a little round body with 2 little legs. And then you've got the Clavets, which are kind of they're humans, but they're from the fields of Foom. So they're farmers and have really high defense. They use sword and shield.
Yep.
There's the Selkies, which are kind of thieving nomadic humans.
Mm-hmm.
They use a staff or like a racket.
It's more like a bait,
Like a
kind of like a
mace.
bat or a mace type thing. But usually it's kind of a lightweight thing, like a mallet or something.
Yeah, it changes based on which weapon you have. But,
Yeah, but it's basically like a tennis racket.
But deadly.
yeah.
Yeah,
It
like
is-
deadly tennis racket.
It is a Final Fantasy IX style racket. If you have played that game, they have a similar thing. It's weird. I don't understand what part of the world that comes from. It looks like it should be used for like highlight or something, but whatever.
That's a scoop.
And then the 4th race is the Ukes. They are basically walking suits of armor with like weird
Bird parts.
birdie arms.
Who may or may not have bodies.
It is unclear if they have bodies.
A physical form, even.
Yeah. But they are the super strong magic race. And, I forgot to mention, Selkies are kind of balanced, and they're faster than the other races.
They also have the only dodge mechanic.
Yeah. They have a well, no.
It's like a backflip. It's like a
Ukes
dodge
and
roll
Selkies.
kind of thing.
So I guess that's an important distinction. Each of the races, the things that distinguish them are their base stats, their weapons of choice, which those weapons will have different focus attacks that you can use. And when you press the attack button, if you hold it down, you'll get a focus attack.
Yeah, it's like a charge attack.
Sometimes it'll jump. Sometimes you'll shoot a blast or something. Sometimes you'll do like a area.
Some of them
attack.
like bash, some of them pierce.
Yep. Clavets and Lilties both block when you do defend. It's the other starting kind of command you have. Both of them will kind of hold up a shield or a spear and block. Selkies will do a backflip, which gives them invincibility frames for a few seconds. And Ukes just become invincible. They just stand in place and turn invisible, and you can't hurt them.
Yeah, they're like immobile and like
Invincible.
they phase out.
Yeah. So there's a pretty big distinction there in terms of how they can defend themselves. And so Ukes, they are the magic class. They use hammers. Ukes, their magic charges faster than other races. Selkies' focus attacks charge faster than other races. So that is the biggest.
Lilties charge magic slowest.
Yes.
Yeah.
The second fastest magic is Clavets.
Mm-hmm.
Lilties have second fastest charge, like focus attack,
Focus.
I think.
Yeah. So those are the big distinguishers, what weapons they use, what their base stats are. And so which race did you guys pick?
I went Selkie. Well-rounded, quick. Seemed like a solid choice for the first playthrough.
Yep.
I played through on Selkie and Clavet. No, I played through Selkie and Lilty. My first save was Clavet. I played on Uke on multiplayer, and I just started a new game, today, and I picked Clavet today.
I
So
played with
played
Lilty.
everything.
I used a Lilty because they have high strength, and I thought I would just min-max strength and then just go through the game. There are some bosses that is not a real smart decision to do.
No, it's not really viable.
No, that's totally fine.
You could do it. It's just time-consuming and tedious.
Wait, did you say max strength?
Trying to min-max.
I can think of at least
putting
one that I don't think you can physically attack.
You can physically attack all the bosses.
Okay.
It's just how regularly can you physically attack them? That's the problem.
Right.
Sometimes you have to wait until they're in the perfect position. But I found Lilty to be fine. I honestly wish I picked Selkie or Yuke now that I realized how important the dodges were. But
yeah, how far did the spear increase your actual range?
Not very, because Lilties are short.
Because their arms are so tiny?
Well, because they're short. Like, sometimes there are enemies that are just high up, and you'll just swing and go under them, which is super annoying.
What's really nice about the Clavet attack animation is that the third attack in their hit string is like an uppercut that can hit almost all flying enemies. So you can do it probably on average like 2 out of your 3 basic attacks have an animation that can hit flying enemies, which is really nice. I think only one of Lilties can.
Yeah, and it's really annoying. It's incredibly annoying to be like, I'm swinging at this thing and I'm missing every single time. But it's not you're not going to ruin your experience if
You're right, but it makes a pretty big difference.
Choices. Yes,
it's
a surprising difference.
Like I think that's why that's why between Clavet and Lilty I favor Clavet, only because there are some enemies that you can't attack because you can't reach them at certain parts of the game, and Clavet mitigates that a lot by just having better attack animations, which is kind of weird. It might be like a slight drawback. I wish that wasn't a problem. I wish that the character model would just be like attached to the ground. Yeah, like universal. I mean, I get it that it kind of makes the game feel more real, that it's hard to hit aerial enemies. But it was more of an annoyance than anything.
Yeah, because my Lilty was so short, there were times where my focus attack, if something was flying and I had a projectile focus attack, it would just go under them and miss. And I was like, if my character was just taller, I would be hitting this thing, but because it's so short, I can't.
And some enemies like have resistances and stuff that you have to like hit them with fire or hit them with gravity or hit them with something to make them their vulnerable state. Otherwise, it takes an unreasonable amount of attacks to defeat them without doing that one like state change. And I would rather, and they kind of do have that for flying enemies, but it's harder to make work. I wish that it would just have, instead of missing entirely, you just hit them, but like it does like half damage or something because they're in the air, so they're in a more defensive position.
Yeah, and that was, if you hit a flying enemy with gravity, they become completely immobilized and they're very easy to kill. If you hit,
they take more damage too,
and they take more damage.
Yeah.
If you hit a ghost with holy, they will stop being invisible and they will become visible and corporeal, and they take more damage.
If you hit flans with fire, they take more damage or are instantly killed.
Flan.
Electric enemies, like the electric jellyfish that kind of float around, ice is their weakness. They're basically Metroids.
Yeah. So I actually didn't use magic until like the second to last or third to last dungeon.
Is that when you fight the Lich?
I didn't fight that boss. I just skipped that area because it was tedious to do as a single player.
Yeah, it kind of is.
I got most of the way through it, and then there was a section where it was like, yeah, you need to get hit with spells of this particular type. I was like, nope. What if instead I went anywhere else?
That puzzle mechanic wasn't that well thought out for single player.
No. And then there were times where it was like, yeah, you need to put a chalice on this, and then you need to stand over here. And I was like, what if instead I went to the first level again?
And just messed people up with my spear.
Yeah, just speared them so good.
We can talk about something that is cool about this game, which is they make the levels scale in a way that actually makes sense. Like, let's say you set out first year. You go to the very first place, the very first level. It's called Riverbell Path. Very simple, like baby's first level. The first year you do it, great. You get your drop of myrrh. Next year, it's like deactivated. You can still go there. You can still complete the level if you want. If you're trying to grind, like I do.
Someone So if someone was
so inclined to need to get all the stat items, within the first 5 years of the game, that is an option for you.
Why the arbitrary 5-year cutoff?
Because that's the point at which you can beat the game.
Yeah, I guess this is not really a spoiler, but you can beat the game anytime after a certain number of years. Like the speedrunners can beat it in, I think, earliest as 5 years.
Okay.
5-year cycles. Anyway, once a mer tree is reactivated so that you could go reach it again, it like that whole level advances in a tier. So it goes from like tier 1 to tier 2. And then you do it again. It goes from tier 2 to tier 3. And tier 3 is the max. Which I guess I would have liked it if it was a little bit harder than just tier 1, 2, and 3, but that makes it actually kind of more relevant that, hey, you can go visit these levels again, and if you visit them again, they get a little bit harder. It's not just boring over and over again.
And when we say get harder, it's not just that the enemies have more health or something. There are like entire monsters new monster types that will show up.
Yeah.
The bosses will have different moves when you fight them again.
Mm-hmm.
The drops will change. The treasure chests will change. The types of rewards you get at the end of the level will change. And so it's different enough that you don't get bored even though the level geometry stays largely the same. There are some rare circumstances where the level geometry...
Yeah, the level geometry does change a little bit. It's pretty infrequent, but it does happen. Yeah. One thing that's interesting to note is that all the items in the game, there are some that are like time sensitive for like first cycle, second cycle, but by the end of third cycle and beyond, they actually become all available depending on how you play the level. So I'm happy to hear, as a completionist, as a grinder, that you don't have to worry about locking yourself out of finding some item because you missed an opportunity. There's always an opportunity to get whatever item or grinding item you're looking for.
Aren't there, I'm not up on my Final Fantasy stuff, but aren't there certain Final Fantasy games where you can only get certain items if you, don't open, X chest at some point in the game?
There are lunatic conditions like that sometimes.
When you say lunatic, are you just describing it like that, or is there a mechanic called lunatic mechanic? In Magic the Gathering, there's madness mechanic.
No, this is not Shadows over Innistrad. This is not delirium and madness, unfortunately. No, I'm saying that if you care enough to do that, you might be a lunatic. And I am a lunatic. I got Excalibur 2 in Final Fantasy 9.
Could you regale us with another example besides Excalibur 2?
Let's see. One where you can't touch a chest, or one where if you don't do something immediately, it's just not available ever again. Which situation?
Surprise me.
Yeah, pick one. Just pick a good one.
Let's see. There's one in Chrono Trigger, which is not a Final Fantasy game, but it is
fine.
It is another Square game. Because that game you jump through time frequently, there are some circumstances where you'll see a treasure chest in the past and then see that same treasure chest again in the future. And if you get that treasure chest in the past, it will be gone. The item will be gone in the future. But if you don't get it, it actually upgrades. And so
keep going. Finish.
So when you get it in the future, you get an upgraded version of the item, and then you can create a paradox by going into the future, getting that item, and then going back to the past, and then getting it again.
The worst version?
That was going to be my
nice.
Yeah, you can create a paradox. It's great.
Okay.
It's not... Wait, is it a paradox?
Well, then the one in your inventory should disappear.
Time works, whether or not it's a paradox.
I think it's actually fine, depending on what model of space-time you're looking at.
If we got
four-dimensionalism, we're so good.
We're good.
Yeah, so that's a big one. And then I was going to say in Final Fantasy VIII, there is a section where you're in a prison, and you can play cards against prisoners.
What? How gritty.
Yes, if you beat the prisoners at cards, they will give you items or hot upgrades to some of your equipment. And if you don't do that, the prison ends up you can never go back to the prison. So you need to beat those prisoners at cards, otherwise you can never get their stuff.
Okay.
Yep.
All right, well, back to Crystal Chronicles.
Yes.
Talking about sort of scaling, one thing I really did like was how the game handles character upgrades, your personal progression through the game. You finish a game, then you get to choose one artifact to keep with you, which is basically, it can be a stat boost, attribute bump of some sort. And I liked both the freedom of that and sort of the overall structure that every time you complete a dungeon, you get that sort of tangible reward from it beyond that stupid myrrh that doesn't help my stats at all.
Yeah. And you're not leveling in the traditional sense.
No.
There's no EXP, there's no levels.
Yeah, you just need to, as long as you get to the end of the level, you will get a stat upgrade.
Mm-hmm.
Which is
nice. You get to pick.
Exactly.
Yeah. It's only at like super late game when you can't pick some of them because you've already gotten them. And it's like, oh, I've only got it gives you 8 options, and if some of them are ones that you've already gotten, they're blacked out. You can't actually get them a second time. You're like, oh, I guess I have to get this one because all the other ones are blacked out. That only happens super late game.
Yeah. I can't get a second Chocobo pocket. I need to get a Moogle pocket.
So that's how you kind of scale. There are opportunities for you to increase your overall max health, to increase the amount of command slots you can use. And that's particularly effective when you have to start combining your spells into new spells. Each one of them takes a command slot to use. Each combined spell takes like the 2 respective spells that were originally there. So like a level 2 spell takes up 2 command slots, and you need to have more command slots that would be besides your regular attack, defend.
Usually
slots.
A Phoenix down.
Usually a Phoenix down isn't one of them. It's basically your extra life mechanic when you're in single player mode.
Yeah,
but
and I guess a good place to go with that progression is just that this game has loot galore.
Oh,
I would say.
Baby.
Right.
Almost every enemy will drop something, and for the most part, like you'll get kind of blueprints. You'll get blueprints for
recipes,
different weapons and armor and stuff. And without taking it to the proper craftsman, you don't really know what it takes to make those things.
Or what it is.
Or what it is, even if you were to craft it, what the hell is it? Would I want it?
One example is one of them is called Iron Shield. Great, I know what that's going to be. But one of them is called Wisdom Tome, and you don't know what it's going to become until you craft it, and you can't craft it until the mid game. So, some of them are kind of off the wall.
Yeah, some of them are Valiant Weapon. Okay, is that better than this mighty weapon?
Is that better than Warrior's Weapon? Is that better than Victorious? I'm not sure how the classification of these adjectives go.
I don't really know, but okay, I guess I'll try to make one of these. And so you kind of get this. You have a very limited inventory in Crystal Chronicles.
That is one big downside that I have.
And throughout time, you need to juggle a few. Your inventory can be responsible for a few different things. It can be food, which is a instant heal and a stat boost whenever you use it in a dungeon. And so that is one of your best ways to heal if you're in trouble. It's instantaneous. It's a big health bump. It'll make the fight easier because even the minor health boosts or strength or defense or magic boosts that those foodstuffs give you can be enough to cut the number of attacks you have to do or the number of attacks you can take in a significant way. It also is responsible for your Phoenix Downs, which you need to not die if you...
Which you just need.
Yeah, if you screw up and you get killed, that'll keep you alive.
I actually sell all my Phoenix Downs.
Yeah. We got a badass over here, man. Sold all his Phoenix Downs.
I don't even use it. Who cares?
I didn't even know what that was for.
I stuff my pillows with those. Stuff my pillows with Phoenix Down. And so then you've got the
You also need all of your spells, all of your weapons, and your equips take up slots.
Armor, your
seeds. All your seeds, guys.
Your seeds that you need to send to your family.
All of your crafting materials.
All your crafting materials. And so at a certain point, you've just got so many things in your inventory. Okay, a quarter of my inventory is dedicated to crafting items that I don't know what they make or if they'll ever be useful. I've got a bunch of food because I don't want to die. I've got 4 Phoenix Downs because, I don't know.
Just in case I do die.
Shit could get hairy. And I need to leave open 6 slots because I need... Who knows? Maybe I'll get Magicite or new crafting items that sound even more badasser.
So my problem was that there was no bank.
Yes.
There's no bank in this game. You need to be able to
take your money to the bank.
Have some kind of... And we don't have to have it be like a Monster Hunter, huge chest where you can hold 5 pages of items. No. If I could just hold 10, 15, 20 items in the bank.
Just store that shit in the caravan. Like, what's in there?
Like, you have this huge caravan. Like, why
There's
can't
a
you just
wagon
throw
following
shit
you
in there?
everywhere.
With this weird, like, round-nosed ox thing.
Gino,
Let
do
it
you know
hold
the
some
name
shit.
for the weird round-nosed ox thing?
Pompum?
It's Papua. It's like a Papuagilus or something. There's like 7 syllables.
I don't know. It looks a lot like a Wendigo from FF9, but not quite.
Ooh, Wendigos. We're familiar with those.
Yes. We are very familiar with
While Gino's figuring that shit out, I think the real way...
I've got the guidebook right here.
Yeah, he does.
Yeah, he's leaping through.
I think the real way to manage your inventory is... like, keep no more than 2 of any particular crafting item. Because I think only until super late game do you need 3 of anything.
Yeah,
3
you don't
or
really
something.
need, like, you don't need 7 iron at any point.
Right, yeah. I think, like, you keep, like, max 3 if it's a pretty common use item, but all the merchants will sell these things to you, and eventually you get to a point in the game where money doesn't matter anymore.
No.
I mean, that's not really a spoiler. That happens in lots of games where, like, your in-game currency, like your Final Fantasy money doesn't matter more, so you can just go buy what you need. I kept at most, I mean, I said that I sold all my Phoenix Downs, but I kept 1 in case something happens.
You're a liar.
I thought you were hard.
All my excess, so I keep 1, right? I keep 1 just in case some shit happens and I die. Controller gets turned off or something.
Okay, so
I'm using a link
coward.
cable.
Because you're a coward.
I mean, I'm using this old Game Boy, and if like the batteries fall out and I get killed,
totally.
Yeah. I don't have the back on my Game Boy, so I just gotta hope.
Because you like to live dangerously.
Yeah,
you don't put it back on your Game Boy Advance.
I'm just a badass, guys.
I just leave 1 battery out. That's the only way I can feel anymore.
I actually do the trick where you just like pull out 1 battery and just hot stop it real quick so the game actually doesn't turn off.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Well, anyway, inventory is hard to manage, but there's ways if you've played the game enough, you know what you need and you don't need.
This guidebook has nothing for me.
I don't keep the food. I sell the food. I don't really use the food that much.
I save food.
Yeah,
food's important.
No, you don't really need food. That's just money to me to be sold for.
The other big complaint I have about sort of general game mechanic beyond the inventory was the bonus system that you didn't know going. I think if you had the Game Boy hooked up to the GameCube, it would tell you. Right, but without that, you don't know what the bonus is for that particular level. So you just have to sort of play it and hope for the best.
I was playing and I was just like, I hope it's physical attacks.
Right.
I hope it's using them, not using them.
What we're describing here is this sort of like extra like achievement that is hidden from the player's view. Every time you start a new dungeon, there's like this like extra condition, like a little extra bonus win condition, like don't use magic spells, or like don't take physical damage, or open treasure chests, or pick up money, or like whatever. And that actually becomes really important because it gives you a score for your level at the end. It doesn't matter that much in single player because in multiplayer mode, whoever gets the highest score gets to pick the bounty first, which is kind of important. But then you get like a numerical score, anywhere from like 50 to 250, I think is where it falls. In later game, the bounty that you get is dependent upon your score. So sometimes if you don't know what your achievement is, you go into a level and it could be a hard, like tedious level. Some of the late game levels are pretty hard. And if you get a bad achievement and you failed it, it was like deal damage with spells and you never dealt any spell damage that whole level, you're going to get a bad score. And you might have just wasted an hour of your time trying to get some item that you can't get because you didn't have a Game Boy Advance link cable to tell you if you had a bad achievement. Luckily, if you do have that, you can sort of like go out of the level, go back in until you get a good one.
Yeah, so I think that raises a fine question. This game used the Game Boy Advance link cable and a Game Boy Advance because this game is 4-player.
Oh, yeah.
This game is absurd. You want to talk about criticism? Well, I think it might be the only game that ever used that link cable. I think there might be one other one.
Legend of Zelda 4 Swords Adventure.
That's the one.
Such a mercenary structure. Like, there's no other rationale for that beyond, like,
hang on.
You're buying
However,
this was the precursor to the DS. This was like, you got 2 screens. Like, you could look at your Game Boy and then look at your TV, and it's 2 screens, guys.
This is the precursor of the DS. This is the precursor of the Wii U.
Yeah.
It all started here.
With the link cable, guys.
With the link cable and Final Fantasy Crystal Chronicles.
The only time 2 consoles have been merged.
That's not true.
Hang on.
You can do it with the PSP.
What?
And there are some games
No
where
one
you
gives
can
a shit about that.
You can use a PSP as like a rear view mirror for a driving game. I forget which one it is. I
What
think
a-
it's Gran Turismo.
What a useless way to link the PSP. Like you'd have to like hold it in another hand or like put it on the table.
You attach it to your TV, of course, with your
Excuse me.
PlayStation
All right.
attacher.
Actually, something might predate that. Is there was like an attachment you could get for your GameCube to play Game Boy games on it. I had it.
Weird.
You could like
Yeah,
it was
shit, I
like
remember
little,
that.
It was this like little base that you'd like plug it up into like the asshole of your GameCube.
So it's just a Game Boy game.
Yeah, like you could just like stick in a Game Boy game and then it would play Game Boy on your TV. I thought that was the sickest shit. You could like play Final Fantasy Tactics Advance on the TV.
I hope that the link cable allowed you to do some of that. Please let it do anything.
No, it doesn't let you do that.
Damn it.
For any other game.
It shows your bonuses.
And true to Nintendo fashion, as all Nintendo games afterwards that use similar technology, the second screen's just a map.
Yep.
It's a map and a menu.
Kinda, yeah.
Just like all games that have used this technology since. It turns out it's very difficult to look at two screens.
You need it for a speedrun, actually. You have to make sure that you get a good bonus to get a specific item like in just one run.
So you have been studying up for speedrun purposes?
Yeah. So
Good.
don't worry. I'm going to put the team on my back for the speedrun.
Good, because I am not. So that is a really interesting... I think like as a historical artifact, Crystal Chronicles is interesting because it kind of forecasted the type of weird experimental stuff that Nintendo would do for the next 2 decades. Or decade following it, I guess.
Yeah, basically.
Decade following it.
Yeah, that's
This is 2004, so...
Yeah.
In 4-player, this game becomes very different. So in single
Let's
player...
talk about some 4-player stuff, yeah.
You've got a Moogle named Mog, I think.
Yeah.
Oh, actually, let's talk about Mog for a sec. What did
How
you think
much
of
fun
Mog?
to style his hair?
I love styling his hair.
Just abuse him. You know, you just shave him, just paint him whatever color you want him.
Lie on your back, Mog.
Flip over, let me shave you.
You need to shave him, and then you need to paint him all sorts of sickening colors.
Yeah.
Based on what color you paint him, your map
For heat
changes on the Game
retention.
Boy.
Your map changes on the Game Boy depending on the color. Also, he uses different spells depending on what color you paint him.
Yeah.
True.
They'll use fire, ice, or lightning,
Depending on
depending on
what you paint him.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I just liked knocking him over because the
He's-
animation of him falling over was adorable.
He was
It
fine.
kind of was.
He was okay.
But then again, there was this little thing where, like, if you're in a desert area and it's hot, your Moogle is hot, so they can't carry your chalice for very long.
Yeah.
Like, that
So-
was
You gotta
actually,
shave him.
it was annoying, but kind of cool.
So, yeah,
That they made you care.
we haven't mentioned this. So we mentioned how there's miasma that makes you like people can't live in the
haven't even
miasma,
talked
so
about
you
this
need
Yeah,
a
this is a big
chalice.
point we totally glossed
This is a
over.
really big point.
Yeah.
Your cup, your fancy cup, that somehow holds liquid despite having a hole in the bottom.
Yeah, and despite having no edges.
No edges at all. It's fine.
It's magic, guys. We're good.
Magic,
Whatever.
magic. Your cup makes a giant circle around it. And if you are outside of the
Safe
circle, you take damage and you will die.
Right.
If you're inside of the circle, you're safe.
You're kind of saying this wrong. You're right, but you're
Okay.
not saying why.
Okay?
like, Every time you
Why
go
don't
into
you
a level,
enlighten me?
I'm just all right.
What are the
You said the
respiratory
basics.
effects of miasma? How does it affect? How does it affect clavit biology?
At least Pete mentioned that it was because of the miasma. Like in the level,
I assume that our listener base is smart enough
just
to figure out that it's
fine.
a miasma.
all the levels have miasma in it. The chalice creates like a sphere around you that keeps it out.
Yes. Some reasons. There's a circle. You don't go outside the circle.
Fine, sure.
This decision, I think, is pretty... So, as a design decision, I think it's pretty ingenious. If you're making a 4-player multiplayer game and you can't afford to pull the camera back to render more space because you're pushing the limits of what a GameCube can do already, and if you had to render more things, all of a sudden the game would be a chuggy mess. So, in order to have a set camera that doesn't really move around too much, that you know exactly what it's going to capture at any given time, you basically draw a circle on the screen so that all the characters have to be in the same place at the same time, otherwise they die.
In fact, the camera follows the chalice, not the player.
Yes.
True.
And so if you decide to run off screen playing multiplayer,
You're dead.
surprise, you're going to die. Like, you're going to be off screen. There'll be a little indicator saying, hey, he or she is over there, but you're going to be dead.
Important to note that the player carrying the chalice moves slower than your teammates.
Of course they do.
You can't leave them behind.
Mm-hmm. Chalice bearer is
so
a important
chalice
job.
single player, chalice multiplayer.
So single player, Moogle, your buddy Moogle, he flies around and carries it.
Carries
and
his
he whines about not wanting to carry it anymore.
So
during
you
boss
take
fights.
it, and then he whines about wanting to carry it.
Yes.
You can eliminate this entirely.
You kill him?
All right, so here's the trick, right?
Okay.
There are times in the world where you are immobile. Sorry, not immobile, but like you're not moving. You're doing something. You're fighting an enemy, right? All you do is tap the button to make him drop it while you're killing an enemy, and then tap it after the enemy's dead and when you want to progress, and he'll never complain. Like, it seems like that's a lot of work, but it's actually not.
No, I did that the whole time. It's just like when I'm in a boss fight and I have to run around in circles because the boss is attacking me.
My boss battles don't take very long, so never had to worry about it.
This chalice is so heavy.
I know
Thanks,
you're getting
Mog.
laser beamed, but just can you carry this thing for a while?
It's just so heavy.
He
Shut up,
does-
Mog.
I know this
He does
guy named
sweat, though.
Armstrong just gave you the elbow drop.
What'd you say, Pete?
He does sweat.
He does sweat. It's adorable when he's sweating.
Just a-
It's adorable when he does anything.
It's an indicator of how tired he is, how many sweat drops fall off of him.
I know, but I like him when Moogles are to be seen and not heard.
Ooh,
Gino,
whoa.
that's a pretty specious claim.
I'm sorry.
Oh my
I'm
god.
sorry. But I want to know that Moogle is carrying that chalice.
Apologize to all our Moogle listeners.
I want Moogles to be bringing me my mail. I don't want to hear about their opinions.
My AI racism comment just seems so fine now. Because AI don't have feelings.
But Moogles do.
Moogles do.
Moogles feel, man.
What were we talking about before we got off on? Oh, we're 4-player.
Single player
Four-player,
versus
yes.
multiplayer.
Exactly.
Yes, so multiplayer. Billy, go.
All right, so in multiplayer, one of the players carries the chalice. There's no more Moogle. This is fine. Usually a Selkie will carry because they're the fastest race. So they move faster with the chalice, but it makes your teammates have to work together. This makes...
It's worth mentioning, when Lilties have the chalice, they
They
bop it on
their head.
which is adorable.
They're just running around while they're just like soccer ball bombing it on their head.
Yeah, they can dribble for days.
It's pretty perfect. Other cool things about multiplayer, besides the whole link cable shenanigans, actually one other thing with the link cable is your menu becomes real time as opposed to
pausing the game,
which is kind of annoying.
Yeah.
Like you can still pause the game, but going into the menu doesn't stop the gameplay. So you have to kind of be fast about your gameplay stuff, or just stop moving entirely, be in a safe area and stop moving. What is cool about multiplayer is that it requires more teamwork, more than just 4 people being there. In single player mode, you can fuse spells together by putting them next to one another in your command slots. But in multiplayer, that's not the case. There's no more fusing. In fact, you and your allies have to cast the spells you want in the same spot at the same time. That creates the effect of spell fusion. That's a good idea and concept. It was executed poorly.
You need really specific timing, and you need to line up your spells perfectly. So it's like 1, 2, 3, spell.
Go. And
Go.
there's different rhythms for different spells. Like some spells have to happen first and then second. And like there's like a little indicator, like a spinning, like I guess it's like a cursor where the spell's going to hit. And there's like different rhythms or cadences for when the spells have to be popped off for the effect to occur. And that was just like, that blew my mind. I just could not wrap my head around it. Luckily, for the 4-player speed run, we don't need to fuse that many spells, and if we are, it's kind of basic stuff. But
Yeah,
man.
and some spells, like, they fuse. I'm trying to.
I know all the
If you
combos.
go in the
if you-
wrong sequence
Yeah,
for
they
some of the
fuse something
spells,
differently.
you get
Yeah.
something different.
Yeah.
And so if you let
One
up
good
early,
example is you
slow
can
versus
slow
holy.
versus stop. Yeah.
What is the difference there?
Sorry. There's the other three. There's the other 3
Okay, I have a guidebook right here.
There's 2 spells that cost 3 magicite.
There's a section here that says timing structures for fusing magic.
Oh, one of them's haste.
There are 5 types.
Yeah. There's like
Type
5
A.
different like sequences.
Type A is the easiest timing of them all. Once the rings are together, all players release the A button at the same time. You might want to practice with 1, 2, 3, count down, but it's impractical during a difficult fight. It's much more efficient to agree that everyone will cast the spells the moment the rings come together. Type B, it's slightly trickier than Type A. After the first player releases the A button, 2 or more players release their buttons after a pause of about a second. When you're casting spells that require different timing for multiple players, determine in advance the order of release. It's helpful for players to go in the same order each time. Great to know. Type C. To create a Type C spell, the first 2 players release the A button at the same time, then other players release their buttons after a slight pause. While learning how long to pause is mostly a matter of practice, you can also listen for a slight hum that emits from the rings and watch for it to change color slightly. But wait, there's also Type D.
There are 5. There's going to be an E, too.
Type D spells seem difficult at first, but once you learn the timing, it's actually pretty easy. All players release the A button with a fairly long pause between each spell. Type D spells are hard to pull off in a hectic battle because they take a long time to set up. But they're some of the most powerful spells around. And hold on to your fucking seats. Type E. Type E spells are similar to Type D.
This is the good shit.
But each player's pause before releasing the A button is shorter for Type E. Fusing magic is one of the most enjoyable parts of a multiplayer game, but it's also the trickiest by far. Practice and patience are the best way to become spell fusion masters.
All right, let me guess them.
Wait, before you do. I love how it says in any multiplayer game. Like, not this one specifically. Like,
all multiplayer games.
You're playing, like, Mario Kart.
Mario Kart Double Dash. You're like,
I wish you could spell fuse.
If we could just spell fuse this blue shell with this red shell, this game would be fucking sweet. But instead, I just have to throw fucking banana peels.
This is some boring shit. I'm going to go play Crystal Chronicles.
So, let me guess that, like level 3 element is a Type D.
I'm looking. I'm going to try and see if there's a section where it says the types of fusion you need, because it wasn't near the...
Well, all right. Anyway.
It described the types, but it didn't describe what they were. But that's fine. There was a 5-section description on how you can do spell fusion.
Spell fusion was way better in single player than in multiplayer.
I'm going to say this right now. Spell fusion was better in Chocobo Racing.
What?
Gina.
You can pick up Magicite, and then if you pick up 2, they fuse together to become better, and then if you pick up 3, they all fuse together.
Do you know what else did that? Diddy Kong Racing.
So what I'm saying is, yes, basically.
Yeah.
So what I'm saying is the superior clearly, because spell fusion is one of the most fun parts of all multiplayer games, Chocobo Racing and Diddy Kong Racing are superior to Mario Kart.
Diddy Kong Racing probably is.
Diddy Kong Racing kind of is, though.
Yeah. I have a copy of Diddy Kong Racing.
Those silver coin challenges.
Oh, man. Get that shit out of here.
You can also it says there's some sections. Spell fusion by yourself. Spell fusion with your Moogle.
It's lonely.
Multiplayer spell fusion.
Yourself, man.
Hey, Moogle.
We got
over here. Let's get some spell fusion going. I'm not even going to call you pretty first.
Did the enemies... No. This is just the question I had. This is probably an obvious question on multiplayer, but since I didn't play it, I assume the enemies scale with how many people you have participating?
They scale up in number. I don't know if they scale up in health too, but I think they do.
But
they scale up in health.
The bosses would have to have more health.
Yes.
Okay.
Actually, I think the tier 1 bosses don't have any more health. So, like, you just, like, blow up the first...
just tear through that stupid...
Oh, yeah. Like, it's probably like a 4-second boss fight for River.
It is very quick. I've seen it. It's very quick.
Okay.
The crab didn't have a chance.
Crap.
Yeah, so that is the situation with spell fusion. It is very complicated. Don't do it, is the answer.
But it's the most fun.
That's true. It is the most fun, but just don't.
Of any video game.
Any
multiplayer game.
Halo was fine, but I couldn't fuse my plasma grenade with my frag grenade.
The best it gave us was, dual wielding. But it's not the same.
like DDR was a pretty cool game with those bats and everything, but
well, you can do
fuse
pad
spells.
fusion. You could do 1 player 2 pads, and that's kind of close. No, you have to like jump from
go
one pad
across
to the
the
next.
bed. Yeah.
But how do you cast
way
Holy?
cooler, original.
You don't. You have to use your hands too.
Okay, that's
You
how
cast
you
put
cast
in
fire,
you
just
put in the
like
Konami code with your hands.
and then you cast Holy.
Yeah.
Okay, that makes
Cast
sense.
Holy.
That checks out.
That's how you play DDR, guys.
So I think that's pretty much everything for the gameplay portion of Crystal
Any
Chronicles.
other mechanics?
So the focus attacks have a few different types. Like
We kind of went
can-
over them.
Yeah, you just jump
earlier.
Apparently, there's an unstoppable focus attack, which I haven't seen, but that's cool.
Oh yeah, there's one that can't be interrupted.
Yeah. I don't know. That's pretty much it. There's a surprising level of depth to the combat in Crystal Chronicles.
Yeah.
I honestly thought that it was just going to be a dumb beat 'em up, but there's
It kind of is on the surface, but then you secretly have all these like enemy weaknesses and special techniques and fusing spells, and like you can play this game as a dumb beat 'em up, and I'm sure most kids did when they first played it. They just like, oh, I have an attack button, use that for everything. But this game could
dumb
be as
kids,
deep
those
as you
are the only
want.
people that would do that. That
Yes,
sounds
all
totally
these
stupid.
kids. Yeah. Woo.
There are 10 status effects in this game. Like, you can get hit with a bunch of different types of stuff. There are buffs and debuffs, which you don't need, but you can do. It is weird how much depth they packed into this thing. And when there's 4 players on screen at the same time, it's madness. Oh, we forgot to mention, when you're in multiplayer, that second screen, we said it was a map, but depending on, each player actually has a different map.
Yeah.
So, one player will have a treasure map that shows the location of all treasure chests. One will have an enemy map that shows the location of all enemies.
One will have a map.
Map.
One will have a monster info map.
It's not really
Yeah,
a map,
so-
but
You just accept it.
Yeah.
Oh, also, your family. I guess we can talk about this in the second
yeah,
half,
we
but
haven't talked
you get to
about-
pick your family.
You haven't talked about
the jobs.
the jobs and stuff. We
orbs.
do need to mention jobs. That's like one other mechanic that will make sense later when we talk about it in part 2, because it's kind of spoilery, but not really. But part of your character creation is selecting your race, your gender, your aesthetic, and then also what job your family does. There's 8 options, like blacksmith, alchemist, tailor, farmer, fisherman, merchant. There's a couple others. I just named 6.
Miller, fisherman,
Miller is
farmer, rancher.
Rancher was one that I
merchant,
forgot.
Blacksmith, tailor, and alchemist.
Yeah.
It's another mechanic that I would imagine works so much better in multiplayer. As
Yes.
Well. Yeah.
Yeah.
'Cause my town was lonely.
Yeah. Not even close.
Oh, okay. We did miss some other stuff. There's one other thing, which is family interaction. Like, your family matters in this game.
Yep.
After every level, we said that after every level, there's like boss fight, and then there's like claim your bounty, right? Actually, between that is another step of getting mail from your Moogle. After every level, you get a piece of mail, and sometimes it's from like an NPC in the game that you have no like story interaction with, but just like a little update and another like character interaction. Fine. Sometimes they have an opportunity to like send an item to somebody, and then they'll send an item back to you. Depending on what your family's job is, whenever your family sends you mail and you have the option to send them something back, depending on what you send them, your family can like level up. And that can unlock some of the late game stuff for you that would otherwise not be available.
Mm-hmm.
So, but like besides just leveling up your family, you got these like dialogue connections that made it seem so personal. And I guess we'll go over some more of that stuff in part 2.
We'll go over that in part 2. I want to talk about that in depth.
Yeah,
But-
we're gonna go pretty deep on that.
So what were your families? Just last thing.
Okay.
What was the job that I picked?
What'd you pick?
Alchemist.
Alchemist. Okay, Billy.
So I was first playthrough blacksmith, second playthrough tailor, casual playthrough today alchemist.
My family was a humble farming family.
Tina's doing this
You
like
didn't get much
backstory
in your family. You probably got some apples.
No, I got some star carrots, thank you,
All right.
and a few bushels of bannock or wheat. Some bushels of wheat. I got paid
get the best
occasionally.
weapons in the game.
No, instead, My family gave me food. They put food on my plate and everyone else's.
The sword that my father gave me struck down the final boss of the game.
Yeah, well, could you have done that without wheat in your belly? No.
I ate a carrot that kept me from dying in the final boss.
All right, it's time for part 2.
They gave me so many carrots I couldn't carry them, so I had to throw them out.
That's rude.
It wasn't
wasteful.
That...
I didn't waste my sword, Gino.
Okay, so that is part 1. If you want to leave feedback on the podcast, go ahead and tweet at DeepListensPod on Twitter, or you can reach us, deeplistenspodcast@gmail.com. Alternatively, you can comment on deeplistens.libsyn.com on all of our episodes. Thank you, Pete.
See you guys in the second half. It's going to be good.
Thank you, Billy.
Thanks, everyone, for listening. See you in part 2.
We will see you in part 2, where we go spoilers on Crystal Chronicles and talk about some of the more thematic stuff that's going on in this game. Till next time, peace!